Hello and welcome into the Kevin Mandeville Show, live here on YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And today I am happy to have another guest on the program. Welcome in, Ted. It's Goas, right? I should have asked that as well. Ted Goas, right?
It is Goas.
Ted Goas,
Yes.
Senior Product Designer of Stack Overflow. Ted, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Kevin, and howdy, everyone.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have Ted on the program. Ted has made a lot of contributions to the email design and development community, so there's a lot to talk about today. Always like to kick things off, though, Ted, talking about your backstory and how you got into the world of the web, especially for you, and then subsequently email. So how did you first even learn about like HTML, CSS, or what were some of your first coding projects you got your hands on?
Well, back when I went to college, I feel like I'm a little weird in the sense that I actually went to school for this stuff. Like, I didn't just kind of fall into it. But still, it was so long ago that school only helped so much. And then, so I got a job as a graphic web designer, I think it was called at the time, which was basically slicing and dicing images into workable web pages. Using whatever resources to learn HTML and CSS there were. At a certain point, CSS Zen Garden came out, and that was like the big light bulb for me. Luckily, the job I had at that time wasn't too demanding, so I could dedicate a lot of time to just viewing source and reverse engineering what was on CSS Zen Garden and eventually building my own stuff. So yeah, until about 2007, everything I did was just for the web. I sent out like the occasional text-only newsletter at whatever company I was at, but I really didn't get into HTML email design until about 2007. I was working for a computer and software retailer, and they used that as one of their marketing strategies. So, I eventually left that job, went to the next one. They needed email done as well. And really, since 2007, every job I've had has involved email. Like, somebody needed to do email, and I, started as like, all right, I'll take a crack at this, and then, progressed to like, all right, I've done a couple of these before, and to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at this now. Like, I can do your emails. So it was a slow burn for sure, but yeah, that's how, and that's kind of still where I am now.
Yeah, so I mean, 2007, that is an OG in the email game, for this space. Like that is some dark waters back in that day that you were navigating.
To give you an idea, sending Microsoft OFT files was like cutting edge.
So, I mean, how did you, like back then, what was even your process like for navigating? Because, I mean, there weren't anywhere near the amount of resources or even tools now back then for designing and developing emails.
Well, luckily, there also weren't that many email clients. And even the Outlooks, I think Outlook was so young at that point where it was still the one that was using Internet Explorer 6 as the rendering engine. So
that's right.
There was no if MSO tags yet, so that was nice. There wasn't even any iPhone yet, so there was no mobile design. So it was all it was basically just making mini web pages in your email client. Like, you could build them in your email client or your web browser, and it was going to look basically the same when you brought it into your email.
Yeah. So you're at Stack Overflow now today, so I'd love to talk about what your workflow today looks like. So what tools do you use? Like, what editor do you use to design, develop? How do you test your emails? I'd love to just dive into what your process and workflow looks like.
Okay. Well, email is only part of what I do at Stack Overflow. As mentioned, my title is a senior product designer, so I spend a lot of time working on the product itself. But product sends emails, and we also like to talk about things that we do occasionally. So email is always part of the job. As far as tools and things, most of the design we do is if we do a high fidelity design at all, it's either in Sketch or Figma. Editors, everybody gets to choose their own here. Currently, I'm on Sublime just because it's what's comfortable. I'm trying really hard to get into VS Code, but it hasn't happened yet. And yeah, we use things like autocomplete and snippets. Nothing so crazy. I know you're a big fan of Emmet. I've tried to get into Emmet. I think it's a little overkill for me, for my workflow. And then we have this awesome thing that I think we're going to talk about later, called our email design system, and that has really helped out a lot and accelerated our workflow. And of course, to test, we use Litmus, and we use various other things to track projects like Trello and Manuscript and Google Docs, and a lot of the software packages I'm sure folks listening are familiar with.
Yeah. I like Emmet. That's probably a bit unique to my workflow too, though, because of how partial. Like I basically have made my CSS to be Emmetized, and so the way I have it partialized, it makes sense where it's completely flexible for me writing it, which is funny. And VS Code seems to be like the hot editor nowadays that everybody's using. I've never really gotten into it myself either.
I'd love to see your Emmet workflow someday.
Yeah, I actually have a whole blog post and like a video on a separate show. I need to just do a deep dive into here's what my workflow looks like. So that's something I got to plan. It's just it takes a bit more work to get set up. So how big? And for those who don't know, I guess I glossed over it, but if you are involved in the web at all, you probably should have stumbled onto Stack Overflow at some point for something. Any kind of help you need, it's the best Q&A site out there for any type of code help. But how big is your team at Stack Overflow, like the company in general, and then how many people would you say ever get involved in doing email?
So the company itself is comparably small for the size of the product and the traffic we get. I'm not sure exactly how large we are, but we're somewhere around 250 or 300 people. About half of that is sales. Our product team, like the engineering, design, marketing, and product managers, is probably less, or maybe probably about less than 100 people. And as far as emails go, this is kind of a pain point for us. Whenever we need to do emails, our various product teams kind of take that on themselves. Like we don't have a dedicated email team, and the people that are involved in an email project, aside from myself, are almost never the same. So the number of people that are involved in an email, like the average email, is probably somewhere between 3 and 6 people. And 1 or 2 of those are really only hanging around for approvals and things like that.
Gotcha. And when you came in, did they hire you because they said, "Oh wow, here's somebody who knows something about HTML emails. We could use that." Was that like a big bonus when you came on, or was there any pre-existing knowledge of what HTML emails were and how to do them at Stack Overflow? I'm just curious in terms of like how you fit into that puzzle piece.
I haven't been told officially, but I think the impression I get is that I was hired as a capable product designer, but the fact that I knew email and enjoyed doing it was a plus, because nobody at the company at the time really knew or even paid attention to the emails that Stack Overflow was sending.
Gotcha. And speaking of sending, what ESPs do you use, or how many ESPs are you using? Is that like really fragmented?
How many is a better question.
How many? Yeah.
Let's see. We have a couple emails, our transactionals, and a couple drip campaigns come right out of our code base. We use SendGrid's API for that. We have the more marketing emails, and some of the other drip campaigns come out of Iterable, and we use their API there as well. We have the 1 or 2 sections of the business dedicated towards careers and jobs, and unfortunately I don't work on that side of the business, but I know they use HubSpot. I just don't know to what extent. And then we have a couple other tools that are here and there, like we use I think we use Chargify or something like that, and they kind of bring their own email template that we can customize it, but we can't just like use one of our templates that we already have. So it's a little much to keep on top of all of that, but we do our best.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be tough, especially on the development side, given that all of those ESPs can do their own processing. That's got to be a hard task to manage. And so then, yeah, talking about approvals. So you mentioned you're using Trello a bit to organize some things, but what does the approval process sort of look like for emails as they go out the door? Are you using other tools, or are you emailing, just using Slack, using another type of project management tool for that, or just like Trello to-do list?
We're trying not to use things like Slack and email because things in there kind of disappear into the ether pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. For when we work on the product, we have this thing called a functional spec, which, just to give a quick overview of what that is that it goes through all of the goals, what we're trying to do, includes copy, design considerations, technical limitations, and then what success looks like, and then all the people that want to can go in and comment on things like that. We're trying to build something for email that includes all the necessary bits and then includes a space for folks to weigh in and then ultimately approve. There's one thing that we've had in the past is I've been brought into email projects and then found that like the subject line wasn't written, or we don't know what the unsubscribe link in the footer is exactly supposed to do, like what exactly they're supposed to get unsubscribed from, things like that. So right now it's a little ad hoc, but we are trying to formalize this a little bit more for email.
That's cool. Yeah, and everybody should be using an email brief of some kind. I'm always fascinated when Litmus comes out with their survey data, how often or how large of a percentage people are like, yep, no, we don't have a brief, or we don't have sort of these campaign outlines. That's definitely a need. So I would actually just love to get into it now, just because I think it's probably a more seamless transition. Let's talk about one of your big projects you've done recently at Stack Overflow is introduce an email design system. So, and this is becoming sort of, design systems are all the new rage, and especially on the web, and now it's making its way to email. Fabio at booking.com just had a whole speech about it this past year at Litmus Live. Stack Overflow, I'm really happy you actually publicized yours and it's out in the public. People can go and look at it. So I'd love to talk about that whole journey and process for you. So I think we know what the inspiration is there's this, as you mentioned, fragmented teams building emails. But how did it even start, and how did it sort of grow and develop over time?
So I mentioned that when I joined the company, nobody really knew much about email design other than Outlook is hard and responsive email doesn't work everywhere. So, but at the same time, individual teams didn't really have to talk to each other. They're kind of empowered to do whatever they'd like as long as they don't blatantly lose money or anything like that. Then when I joined, word, I guess, got out that there's this new guy, Ted. He knows something about email. If you want to work on email designs or fix something you've got or just get ideas, ping him. So I started helping folks. It was great. It was fun. I mentioned that email is not the only thing I do here, so it didn't really scale. So since I have kind of one foot in the web world and one foot in email, and as you mentioned, design systems are kind of all the rage for a while now for the web, I said, well, why not just take something and do an email version of that? So I grabbed some people, we started working on it, and what we came up with was we had an existing design system for the web, so we were able just to kind of bolt a section on for that. So if you visit stackoverflow.design/email, that is where the email section of our design system lives at the moment. And what it does is it basically lets the various product teams working on email get a lot farther than they could have before without, pulling me or one other person into a project, or just building something that completely falls apart, or an email, or just doesn't look like anything that we designed. So that's really the goal. Myself and a few other people are still involved in most of the emails that go out, but it lets folks get farther on their own.
Yeah. And so are people they're coming to this exact URL, copying and pasting required templates or components that they want to use if they're assembling an email?
Right now, we have master templates in the various places that we send email from. So, like, if you're sending an email from the code base, like the logo, the footer, all the CSS reset and the progressive enhancements are already in there. You just have to kind of fill in the middle. If you are working on a marketing email in Iterable, there are 3 or 4 pre-built templates in there that include all that stuff, plus some more, like a hero image or a thumbnail graphic with a headline and a button, things like that. So all that's pre-built, but really, it's clear that you're empowered to take all this stuff, make it your own, replace it with things that are in the design system.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
And so I think one of the most interesting things when I was reading your blog posts sort of behind the process is you started really small to where you just started using an internal Google Doc to collaborate. So can you talk about that? And I love it because we always see these design systems, and sometimes it's like the dribbletize, gorgeous looking, design system, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's going to be this super huge effort. But you started really small and you just used a Google Doc. Talk about what that was like working with everybody.
Yeah, our team did exactly what you just said. I mean, we'd have meetings and folks would be like, oh, Shopify, Polaris, and Atlassian's design system. We'd be like, look, these are all wonderful, but, it's going to take a long time for us to get there. So, like, just try to forget about that right now. And, in fact, don't even think about code right now. Let's just jump into a Google Doc. Let's invite marketing in there. Let's invite, the engineers that don't know as much about regular markup, much less email markup. And let's just think about where we should focus our time, where our pain points are, where we can kind of get the most bang for our buck. And, then we can actually take that and, build out the things and get something out fast rather than just getting paralyzed by looking at code or, just spending time on the wrong things or spending time on too many things, like trying to kind of swing for the fences on your first at bat. So we found that just a Google Doc with comments enabled, so like nobody had to ask for permission or anything like that, and then just emailing folks and pinging them with a link saying, here's a thing we're thinking about building. Here's basically what it is. Just go in there, take a look, leave comments, leave suggestions, and let us know how this would be useful for you.
That's cool. And yeah, it's a great way towards iterating. So, and I'd love to know from your analysis, like what do you want to do next, like with your design system? What do you think you can improve? Like what is your your next things that you want to get done with it that you think would really benefit everybody overall?
Well, the documentation site still lacks a little bit. There are a lot of patterns that are in some of the pre-built templates that I just mentioned to you that aren't actually documented in full yet. Just multi-column hybrid layouts is something that we've been doing for a while. Never actually wrote anything about it. So that's something I'm working on now. Last month or 2 months ago or something, I just went through and did an audit of all of the markup that was in there. There were some VIA lines and just some extraneous code that didn't really need to be there. So I went through and tested that. That includes things like going through the CSS Reset. I know Alex Kelly just tweeted the other day about hey, what's in everybody's CSS Reset? And I think that's a great question to revisit every year. Because there's some things that come out that are new, and then there are some things that are kind of obsolete. You don't need them anymore. So I went through our own CSS Reset and did that. But really, my next step is the first thing I told you about, which is just going through and trying to figure out all the things that we're doing right now and are not documented.
Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, this is a great resource. Everybody go to stackoverflow.design/email to check it out. There are some really fascinating bits in there. So when we come back, we're going to talk with Ted more about some of his other things that he's done, talk about some of his freelancing, open source projects that he's worked on. I just want to take a second to let you know you can check out Email Tees, which is the proud sponsor of this program, emailtees.com, @emailtees on Twitter and Instagram. It's official apparel for email geeks. And today is the launch of the Valentine collection. So you can go and get all of your love-inspired designs there. Rock your email geekdom. Let me know which design you have a crush on. And I'm happy to say that Ted has become a proud supporter. He got himself a great Send Emails Not Blast mug, which is in the mail, going to be there shortly. So thank you, Ted, for doing that, supporting that. But yeah, that just goes to help support this show and all of my content efforts that I'm doing. So yeah, check it out, emailtees.com, @emailtees, Twitter, and Instagram. And yeah, Ted, it's going to give your campaigns an extra kick when you're drinking out of that thing.
If we're talking about email pain points, Kevin, that's still a pain point here. Every once in a while, somebody says, we need to do an email blast.
Oh, yeah.
And
no. Still in education.
No.
There you go. You'll have the mug up on your calls. You'll just be able to be like, hey, here. Which actually, that's something interesting. I actually didn't put this in the notes, but just we can quickly talk about it. Talk about remote work. So you have been doing remote work for how long now?
Coming up on 3 years.
3 years. So what's that experience been like, pros and cons?
I don't know if there's any cons. If you read the... actually, there's one I'll get to. I did write a blog post about this, though. If there's any show notes that you could link that to, Kevin.
Yep.
It is... I found it to be great. The flexibility is wonderful. I'm lucky enough to have an employer who really knows how to do remote well, supports the employees, despite the fact that we have offices. Like, we're not 100% distributed. They really trust us. And, we're provided the tools to do remote work well. When there's no ad hoc, like, what are we going to do for the remotes? Like, everything's built in. And I don't get lonely. I love working from home. I work from home most of the time. I don't, do the nomad thing. And the only thing that's troubling is that I don't have a lot of wind down time at the end of the day. When you have a commute, You think about whatever, and your thoughts gradually shift from work life to home life. And, now sometimes I go from like a work meeting to a family dinner in like 60 seconds. And I'm just kind of like my family's trying to talk to me, and I'm like, staring off into space and be like, well, I'm sorry, what? Design systems, something about? No?
Yeah, I've been doing remote work about the same time, 3-4 years. I feel those exact same things. I think it's necessary. You have to be at a place that has a great culture. Without that, you're toast. But yeah, I do miss the separation of spaces. That to me is probably the hardest thing. And then I would say now it's a little bit unique now, but now that I'm out solo on my own, I find it's a little bit easier just to be motivated when you're working on something with other people. And when you're working alone, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be. But what do you think is good for, or necessary for building that good sort of remote work culture within a company? Like what will make that work and be a success?
It's a culmination of a lot of little things, I think. I think Stack Overflow has even blogged about this on their own blog, but so you can't ever do like lunches or happy hours or anything like that with your coworkers. So we actually have remote versions of those. Of course, there's chat rooms for everything. There's meetups. We're big on meetups. We have this thing called Stack Roulette, which is it basically just goes through the company directory and finds 2 people that you do not work with, like ever. And it just throws you into a 30-minute conversation and you just talk. Like little things like that. It makes you remember that you work with humans. You're not alone. It's not just all about work and isolation and just get your work done. And we don't want to hear anything else from you. So yeah, it's really just, like you said, it's the culture.
Yeah. You got to have all those little things in place. So I'd love to talk about your open source project, Cerberus, which is sort of a pattern template library for HTML emails. So yeah, can you talk about what that process was like creating it? Talk about what it's been like to maintain it, and especially because it's been a pretty popular project within the community and the web community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I started it however many years back. I don't remember at this point, but it was one of those classic scratch your own itch problems. I saw myself at the company I was at doing emails. I was like, man, I'm doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again, like bespoke design. Why not just, write some of this stuff down? And then I created it. I went through a bunch of major iterations. I went to one of the Litmus Live, or might have been the Email Design Conference, back when Fabio did his talk on hybrid. So there's hybrid built into there, and then I really just went through, made sure it was commented well. I took a lot of the opinion out of the design so that anybody could just kind of take it and tailor it to what they needed to be doing. And yeah, it's been a great project to have. Everything that's in Stack Overflow's email design system is based from it. Everybody who has pinged me or raised an issue or a pull request has been super helpful. I've made a lot of friends, and the code has definitely been improved by all of their inputs. And it's been really great.
And so this is sort of a hybrid type of approach for the code base on this project.
You mean hybrid, like?
Yeah, for the coding approach that you're using for the Cerberus template and patterns.
Yeah, there are 3 templates in there. All of them have like a hybrid, aware wrapper on the email, and then 2 of them are more simple. Like one of them is just like if you don't need the columns to shape shift at all. One of them is responsive only, so if you don't want to bother with those other ones that don't support media queries and you just want to keep it simple. And then there is a hybrid template, which does everything hybrid.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so at Stack Overflow right now, you're doing everything in the hybrid version?
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm always curious just to see what people are using for their layout techniques now, especially given some people's audience, they may be doing something drastically different now. So I think it's an interesting time for sort of the wild world of email layouts, especially given
most of our subscribers are on Gmail, and as you and our audience likely know, that all of the various Gmail products are still pretty fragmented as far as what they support. Mm-hmm. So if Gmail ever supports email media queries across the board, and embedded CSS across the board, because a lot of CSS is still inlined as well. If Gmail ever fully supports those, I bet will change.
Yeah, I'm an advocate of doing it now because I don't really think that POP or IMAP is a real audience for the most part, at least from. I know there's limitations on the analytics for email, so there is a margin of error, but and you're doing some guesswork. But every ballpark that I've done with clients, it seems like it's not really a use case. The big one is the images off view. That's probably a much bigger case, but again, we can't accurately measure that. So it's interesting. But yeah, I'm an advocate for anybody who can do it, and I bet an audience like yours could get away with it. Which it's crazy to look at your audience breakdown. 73% Gmail. That is one of the biggest Gmail audiences I've ever seen. That's pretty wild.
When I was going through all of the ESPs that I mentioned before and I pulled this together, I was really surprised.
Yeah.
And then there were some other ones, I can't believe iPhones are not more popular.
Right.
Or just Androids.
Yep.
But yeah.
So I'd love to talk about one of the things you've done as well is you've also done a bit of freelance email work. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about, first of all, who are some of the clients that you've done work for? Because I know you've had some pretty cool ones.
I think, let's see, who have I done work for? I haven't done as much recently just because, I don't know why. I just haven't. It's always been kind of like an on-the-side thing for me. I've never been a full-time freelancer, so I haven't really sought the work out. But I did a lot of work for SeatGeek back in the day. I think they have now scaled up and become so competent with email that they don't need me anymore, which is great. There was a couple more that I've done. There was one for this company called Ambit, which is trying to reinvent contact lists, which I think are terrible. So I was super excited to work on this. They actually had a pretty cool use case. They wanted to do a custom design. They had these custom designs in their templates, but they wanted to make it appear as if it was as native as possible to whatever device it was being opened up on. Down to the margins in the emails, things like that. So it was kind of interesting. I was going through and working through this, and ultimately I found out that removing like half of my CSS Reset was exactly what their design called for. Removing any resemblance of a font stack was exactly what they were looking for. So that was a really fun project.
That's interesting. Any unique challenges when you're dealing with this kind of work in terms of needing to educate clients around the value or the unique problems that email design development faces?
Thankfully, most of my the folks I've worked with, at least recently, are already kind of aware of the value of email, and they kind of know that email markup is a little different. So they know that web markup is not the same as email markup. That might be one of the reasons why I get contacted in the first place. So there's a little bit education, but it's more of like an after the fact sort of education where we work on the project together, and then I deliver it to them, and then we talk about like, okay, now here are some things that you should think about as you kind of, I hand them the wheel, and now that they're driving, I kind of educate them as to like, here are the things that you have to keep in mind, since I'm basically going to jump out of the car now, so you're on your own, not on your own, but like, now that you're driving yourself, this is what you do when you want to update a button, or if you want to create a whole new section, remember to change things here and here. So it's more of that kind of education.
Gotcha. And especially it's helpful for me because I deal with this from time to time a lot more now. Would you do hourly type pricing, project-based pricing? What was your strategy for freelance work for the different projects you take on?
I am on team hourly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just because I'm terrible at estimating, and we all know that, like, scope creep. So
yeah,
if something's going to happen, but yeah, I realize that there are arguments on both sides, but I found that hourly suits me.
Okay. And so for freelancing, would you use any specific tools for that? So would you use certain time tracker tools or billing, invoicing tools, anything like that?
Well, my workflow is pretty much the same. For billing, I use this old app called the Invoice Machine, which I think they give you like 3 invoices a month for free, and that like more than covers me. I tried various time trackers. You can always just fall back to good old Google Sheet, and just log what you did and round everything down to the 15-minute mark or whatever you're comfortable with. And I use a modified version of Andy Clark's Contract Killer, if that is something you're familiar with for contracts. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think that's it. I think there are some other tools that I've been playing around with, like Bonsai and Hello Sign, but it's pretty simple since the volume is not so much large for me.
So what piece of advice would you have to give to anybody who's either looking or is in freelancing for email? What advice would you give to recommend to be successful?
Ooh, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question, but I'll do my best. Just, I guess, know your value. A lot of folks that I work with think that they can do HTML email, and then when they figure out that they can't, that's when they start looking for folks like you. So realize that you are a specialist. Don't let anybody tough talk or just downplay HTML email as something that doesn't matter, or tables 1999. Like, no. I guess just know your worth, price accordingly. The work is out there.
Yep. All right, so got just two final questions, fun ones to end this interview on. So one, what's your favorite email that you've ever sort of designed or built?
That's a tough one. I really like a few of the ones that we've done here lately at Stack Overflow, because we have a number of folks who have different areas of expertise, and they would help create an email that I could never do on my own. Like, for instance, if anybody was on the mailing list when we launched Stack Overflow for Teams, I wish I had the copy of this available, but we had a great marketing designer who came up with this great illustration, work with me on what kinds of things we could do for a mobile version. And then we had a copywriter help me write the copy and down to the buttons, and it was a really great email. Got a ton of response, got a ton of signups off of those series of emails that went off. We did another one similar for our code of conduct that we launched recently. We have a salary calculator email. We're big on animated GIFs here. It's GIF with a hard G.
GIF, yeah, GIFs.
We're very big on those as well. And again, like, it's been really fun working with the marketing design team or whoever works on the images themselves. Like, they're totally aware, to design that first frame really well. Mm-hmm. It's got to be Retina friendly, but still not too big file size. So it's really nice that so many folks here are into email and learning.
Yeah. And then finally, what's your favorite email that you've received, and what's your favorite newsletter that you subscribe to?
Oh, that's a tough one. I always love the Action Rocket emails, including that one they came out with the Fold.
Yeah, the Fold email. Yep.
Yeah. I've always liked I think it's gone over a couple of changes or rebrandings, but I think it's called Dense Discovery. Right now, it's Kai Branch's email. It used to be the Off-Screen magazine. I always enjoy getting those. This is just like pure text, like not design, but there's this newsletter called Future Crunch, which I really enjoy reading. It's just like bite-sized pieces of good news about things that are going on all over the world, because at least I really need that pick-me-up these days.
Yeah, we all need that these days, right?
And they're just great writers. It's a very simple text-only email, but it's a great medium. It's a great medium for email.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ted, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you online, follow you, and what other things would you like to plug?
You can follow me online at Ted Goas, my name. I'm at Ted Goas pretty much everywhere, including my own website, tedgoas.com. And it's just been great being on the show. I'm glad that email is big enough and important enough to be doing something like this. It's great.
Email is not dead. The haters will say it's dead, but it's not.
It's probably going to die next year, Kevin. It always is going to die next year.
Maybe 2020. That'd be a good bookend for them. But no, still alive and well. And we're still here every Tuesday, Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, The Kevin Mandeville Show. So subscribe here on YouTube. Go to kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. Get updates to your inbox as well. All right, email geeks, thank you. We'll see you next week.